Welcome to the show, Julie Douglas, CEO and founder of Dealer Pay LLC. Julie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. Nice to see
Thanks
you.
for being thanks for being on. You know what? Before we go into well, actually, let's ask it. Let's ask our banner question, which is how's biz? But as you answer that, will you just tell everybody who you are and what you do in the world at
Sure,
Dealer Pay?
absolutely. Julie Douglas, CEO, founder of Dealer Pay. We are really the only cutting edge payment solutions provider that's specific to dealers. So, what we've created in this space is something that helps automate processes while interacting with all the other financial systems to help dealers in all their departments.
Okay. And from your perspective, as a vendor serving and working with dealerships across the country, how's biz out there in automotive, Julie?
It's busy. You guys keep me busy, and it's a great problem to have. We're continuing to innovate as we work through all the changes in the industry, good, bad, or indifferent. It's a very exciting place where we're at right now because we're able to listen to some of these things that you guys identify, like you just did. Poor communication, slow follow up. Those are the kinds of things that we take in to make our solutions better for dealers. All that feedback is fantastic.
And by the way, I'm waiting for the day when one of the vendor partners comes on and we say, "How's biz?" And they're like, "It's terrible. There's nothing. There's no business." I mean, nobody
Yeah,
ever
right.
is going to say that because that's not the answer. But Julie, I do know you're out there and you're continually engaging and interacting with CFOs and large dealer groups across the country. And there are a few things that you're seeing, and we'd love to bring you in as a subject matter expert today. In September of 2025, today's September 3rd, what are a couple of the biggest issues that confront CFOs that maybe most people don't realize, don't understand, don't see?
Sure. So, CFOs obviously control the money and they implement or help to implement processes through the dealership, whether it be fixed ops, variable, et cetera, to help improve processes,
Yeah.
except for the piece that has to do with accounting, except for the piece that has to do with money. Even some of the biggest groups that I've seen out there are still using very old technologies to process payments, credit cards, checks, you name it, even crypto. I mean, there's all kinds of options now, but for some reason this piece of the process gets left off the priority list. So, I think where they have concerns are leaks in profitability, areas in where maybe there's compliance concerns, and
Okay.
just overall being more successful front to back.
So you're saying that in a lot of cases, an issue that is a real issue gets overlooked because it's not screaming in front of most people. So you
Mhm.
say older payment methods. What are the older payment methods? What are the newer payment methods? And what's the transition challenge to the new?
Sure. So older payment methods, often referred to as just a commodity, a payments commodity, are going to be using your bank, just a terminal on the desk, otherwise known as disconnected systems. So using a terminal that has a manual batch that requires keys, sometimes even where a customer, for example, in fixed ops would have to go to a cashier and not interact with
Mhm.
a service advisor. Areas like that end up being more manual, taking longer, and lose that full customer experience.
Okay. And the solution is to automate it, to
Correct.
digitize it, to make sure that all the different disparate systems talk to each other. How do you do that? Like what in 2025 September of what's the best practice there to make sure it's automated and working to the best of the ability?
Sure. So, I mean, software providers all over the place are integrating the DMS. I would say that that's the first thing. You've got to be able to have the data, and the data has to be real time and it has to be fast. So, for example, a service advisor's got to be able to pull RO data quickly from the from the DMS, and then process the payment within seconds. Some of
Yeah.
the studies we've shown is customers are waiting. Increasingly getting frustrated. Maybe you got to go here, you got to go there. What we're just trying to do is make that process smoother,
Yeah.
faster, and everybody's experience, even the user at the dealerships experience better.
Yeah. All right, I got a question for you. Something that's become all the rage lately, it seems like in automotive, that I know we talked about on the industry spotlight, surcharging for credit cards. So you
Mhm.
walk into a car dealership, you're going to pay for the the service repair RO, and there's a surcharge if I pay by credit card, which, by the way, I think that happens in industries outside of automotive. Like I've been to restaurants over this
Yeah,
past
every auto.
weekend where there's
Yeah.
a surcharge. I've been to you know, like stores to buy things or rent something, and you're getting charged a fee for running a credit card charge. Why is that? What is that? And why are we seeing more of it right now? And is it something that you would recommend and endorse, Julie?
Sure. So it's a complicated topic. It doesn't have to be, but it is. It is very common now. And yes, it's happening in all retail, restaurants, you name it. I mean, people who once absorbed this as a cost of doing business now know that they can share the fee with the customer. Um,
Yep.
if you were to ask me out of 10 deals that land on my desk, I would say about 7 out of 10 are interested in some sort of surcharge program.
Okay.
Here's the problem. There's a huge compliance risk with this, right? So there's
What's
lots
the
of
compliance risk?
organizations. Yeah, so lots of organizations, financial institutions, even DMSs, even they don't have all the boxes checked to make sure dealers are 100% compliant. So if dealers are willy nilly adding fees here and there to this customer, not this one, I mean, there are fees and risks to doing that. So, even though it's exciting because you get to, maximize profits, the biggest piece of it is making sure you're compliant.
So is compliance charging that same fee uniformly across the board and making sure that you do that?
It is, yes, uniformly, but it is also different by state, which puts another layer of complication on it. It's different by state. It's different, even sometimes having to do with taxes. So, one of the things that's been just a huge priority of ours, because these things continue to change, is that you keep up with these rules and regulations so that
Yeah.
dealers don't have to worry about it and we just take care of it.
Yeah. So where's a good place to go to find out about the compliance piece of this and maybe some of the state differences? And then I want to actually transition into like what if scenarios if a customer
Sure.
comes in doesn't want to pay it. But where's a great resource to go to understand more about the compliance of it?
So we, Dealer Pay, our company is very much educated. We have lawyers on staff. We have accounting resources just to make sure dealers are on point. We do have states up in the Northeast that are still concerned with the word surcharge. So there's another program they refer to as cash discount or dual pricing. So
Mhm.
what you got to be, very diligent about is making sure all of your quotes, all of your ROs and parts tickets, they all have this fee listed on it in the correct manner. Where we find a lot of folks with those standalone commoditized terminals is there's no way they can do that. So
Mm.
we're happy to be a resource. We've also got lots of external resources that we can recommend to dealers to be a non-biased resource. But trust me, I don't want anybody using my system if it's not done correctly.
Yeah.
I've built too much of a reputation to risk any of that.
All right, so let's talk
For
about
sure.
what ifs. You've got a
Okay.
great customer, longtime customer to your auto dealership store, comes in, says, "You know what? I've never paid this. This popped up during COVID.
Ooh.
I don't pay these fees. If you continue to have this, I refuse to do business, or you've got to find another way." Can you remove it from that RO? What are some options to still remain legally compliant, Julie, in the market in September of 2025?
Sure. So if you're going to implement the program, you've got to implement the program. Okay. So
Yeah.
you can't say, I'm going to, surcharge Sam, but not Julie, or
Mhm.
whatever the case may be. It has to be uniformly introduced into the dealership.
Okay.
There are certain exceptions, service contract payments, right? Warranty payments. There are exceptions with that have to be addressed. But here's the thing, and you're probably referring to that customer experience, CSI. How are they going to handle this?
Yeah.
Couple comments on it. First, as you mentioned, they're seeing it everywhere else, right? They're seeing it
Mhm.
at the restaurant, they're seeing it here. So it's not going to be anything new to them. The second thing is you can give them some options. Okay, you don't want to incur the surcharge. We're going to give you the option to pay by a debit card, check,
Mhm.
or even cash. I know that brings back some of our non-electronic payments that don't exactly excite people, but now you're giving your customers an option.
Mhm.
So prior to surcharging being a thing, normally dealers were about 75% credit card, 25% debit card. Now the
Hmm.
scales are shifting a little bit where it's more 50-50.
Mhm.
But
Really
Sam,
interesting.
you've got customers that don't have the money in their checking account. So they
Yeah.
unfortunately have to pay a surcharge if that's what you've introduced.
So how are you tracking it and watching the correlation between the surcharge and CSI? You mentioned CSI. Are there tips and kind of best practice recommendations for implementing this
Yes.
as a, I mean, it does help cover a real fee that exists as a result of running that card. Do you have some tips and best practices for implementing this so that your CSI is not impacted?
Absolutely. Transparency is key. Because of part of the compliance, you have to put signage in each of your departments, your entryways on your doors. We recommend before implementing this is to get your signs in place, get your customers asking questions. But even more is the training of your staff. What we've seen oftentimes fail is CFO, controller, GM says, okay, we're going to start this program, but they fail to communicate that to their team or their staff. So
Which would be a
when
nightmare. Yeah,
no,
that's
so when
terrible.
we
Yeah,
come to install it, service advisors like, I'm not doing this,
Yeah.
Um,
yeah.
so I think transparency, being upfront, making sure we work with them on their talk tracks. Believe it or
Mhm.
not, if all of that is very transparent and communicated to the customer, you are not going to see a big drop in CSI because
Right.
it's been, properly introduced.
So, from your vantage point as CEO of the company, is this a strategy that you would recommend? Every, you know, you hate to do something because quote everyone else is doing it, but it does seem
Oh,
like
no.
everyone else is doing it. Is it something you recommend and advocate for as a line item?
So, I've been in this business for 25 years, and obviously my career is payment processing with
Yeah,
software.
yeah,
But, I do recommend doing it if you 100% believe that you're with a provider that's compliant, that knows the business, that's going to be on the front end of anything that changes ongoing. Um, it is a way for dealers to recoup a ton of their profits. Um, but again, it's got to be implemented correctly. I mean, Sam, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars
Mhm.
more, depending on,
or
and I've got
millions. Yeah,
Yeah.
teams of
Huge.
tiny dealers doing it, and I've
Yeah.
got, 50 plus location dealers doing it. So,
Yeah.
we don't push it. It's not, something that we, would say, I don't want your business unless you're doing it. We want everyone's business, of course, but
yeah,
it's hot and it's a way
yeah.
to really make that bottom line look a little better.
So,
For sure.
Julie, payment processing and that surcharge, that's the hot topic of the last couple of years, right? And many are more adopting it. In your world, what's that next thing that's similar to it? What's that next thing that a lot of dealers are considering or thinking about? What's that next opportunity for our dealer body that's watching that they could capitalize on today?
So, you talk about, increasing profits or saving money, right? There's a lot of those things that aren't like red and flashing in front of you, which you don't really know because, maybe you've not seen an alternative. It's like the hidden
Yeah,
costs, the things
yeah,
associated with those manual processes, the things that are associated with that poor customer experience. So, where we're really pushing is to make sure all processes are automated, but like I tell anybody with any new technology going into a dealer, if the users don't adopt it, then you're
yeah.
not getting the full ROI out of what you just purchased. So one of the things we've done just a ton of work on, especially, the customer experience, the implementations process, that hands-on approach is just to make sure whatever we do, even if it's really cutting edge and really modern, is that the user experience is simple and easy.
Love it.
So that's very important, I think, for any software provider.
Okay, Julie, as we wrap up, just a kind of a rapid fire question for you.
Yes.
What are just a few hidden costs or inefficiencies that you see in dealerships that, if I'm a CFO again thinking about staying up late at night, like the payment credit card processing, doing it right, that's definitely one. Overall compliance and making sure ease of transaction and that your people who are taking payments have all the data in front of them. That's probably two. what are 2 or 3 other hidden costs or inefficiencies I might think about?
Sure. So one big one, and we're probably going to get into the season where it's a little more prevalent, is fraud.
Yeah.
A lot of systems, payment systems specifically, are not mitigating fraud real time. And where we've spent also a lot of resources in making sure whether it's variable, fixed, after the fact, before, is to control loss. And
Yeah.
it's actually a bigger topic. I hate to admit it's not the sexiest topic, but at the same time, it's hugely important. So, from a
Yeah.
CFO's perspective, they don't want to go to their dealer principal and say, hey, we had a $50,000 chargeback on a vehicle. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, so because this person was fraudulent. So, I think, when choosing a provider, you've really got to bring up that topic because it's a big one.
So, Julie, is there a is there a I've seen a ton of fraud. We just did an industry spotlight with a company called MavSign, and MavSign actually will, for all these remote deliveries. Remote deliveries are a huge problem right now. They're actually taking a very digital process and they're actually making it manual by actually sending a live person out to do
Mhm.
a signature, a signing ceremony. So you can actually validate where it's happening, who's signing. You can do the whole notary, all that. Is there a technology or a process in your world that dealers might think about adopting to help avoid or eliminate that fraud on the payment processing side?
Sure. So there's two kinds of fraud. There's real
Hmm.
fraud, like stolen payment types and things like that, or stolen identities, and then there's something called friendly fraud. So
Yeah.
the real fraud, the bad fraud, is using systems. Like, for example, we use an Equifax company called Count, where we can do real time mitigation on things like this person's associated with a lot of chargebacks. Maybe they've been associated with a fraud, or maybe there's
Mhm.
an algorithm that really makes this transaction look and smell funny. So we're able to say, okay, dealer user, we recommend doing a little more research on this before you let this transaction process.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. You had mentioned signatures. With our DMS integration, we're getting a signature on everything, even if they're not in the dealership. It's all
Love it.
about making sure the customer authorizes the goods, services, and the payment type that they're using. And we have a signature, not just on a receipt, but an RO, a parts ticket, a deal, etc. Now, back to friendly fraud. This is something where, I've seen ridiculous stuff. Like, I didn't like the way the service manager talked to me. I'm not paying for this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's certain things like that. Again, I'm going to go back to that signature component. They did sign off on it. So when it
Mhm.
comes down to a chargeback, you've got the ammunition and the tools you need to submit a rebuttal and probably win the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Julie Douglas, CEO, founder, Dealer Pay LLC. It's awesome to have you on the show to talk about all things fraud, the different things that keep CFOs up at night. The credit card surcharging is fascinating. And thanks for reminding us about the importance of keeping up on that. Just a couple comments from our audience as we let you go here. Igor K, 3 comments from him. Most dealers don't charge you a service fee for using a credit card in the amount of 5,000 or less. Most dealers don't want to use a credit card payment on bills over 5K. We're actually seeing more of that, I think. Same with doc fees. You charge all or none, but you can't be selective about it, who you will charge
Mhm.
and who you will not. So I do think, Julie, that's what you spoke to a little bit. And then Eager says, as a former dealer principal, I'm not in favor of service fees. Labor and parts costs are already on the rise, and that already shifting customers to independent repair shops away from dealers. But as those things are on the rise, it's just more expensive. So, Julie, we appreciate you being on the show. Appreciate you
Thank
joining
you.
us and for sharing your perspectives. Julie Douglas, thank
Thank
you.
you.